once again, Drew, I do have a 6 through 10. This is where it can get a little weird. Oh man, this is where it can get really weird for a lot of people. So, 6 through 10. 10, I have Brendan Rice, the great Jerry
Let's
Rice's
go.
son.
All right.
9, a
Love
little bit
it.
further down than some people have him. I have Keon Coleman. 8, I have Troy Franklin. 7, higher than what other people have him. I have Tez Walker. 6, surprised he missed the top 5. Brian Thomas Jr.
What?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Let's
Starting
get
off
funky.
So, do you have any 6 through 10? Or you want to start off with your 5?
No, we could just jump right into 5. I didn't do anything crazy here. I know that it would have been fun since people are starting to really, really fall in love with Xavier Worthy to and I didn't, haven't potentially heard his name yet. So maybe somebody has fallen in love with them, but I don't have a 6 through 10 on this. So let's just rock this top 5. Who you got at 5?
5, I have Mr. Ladd McConkey.
Okay.
I had to put him in somewhere. I've been burned, pun intended, on speedy wide receivers before in the past. And when a guy is big, tall, and fast, I don't think it works out as much as we hope it was. I think there's a small chance a wide receiver turns out to be a star, right? There's even a smaller chance if their main calling card is just speed. Christian Watson. And when Brian Thomas is being fit in that same category where his route tree is very limited, but he's very, again, that type of height and that type of speed is a rarity to come across. 4.33 speed at his weight is just not normal, right? And I do recognize that and I appreciate that. But there's a situation, I don't see a real situation, I should say, where Ladd McConkey isn't really successful in the NFL. Ladd McConkey feels pretty surefire as just one of those guys for the next 8 years in the NFL who's going to be one of the better slot guys that you're like, oh yeah, well, better like top slot guys in the league, and Ladd's going to come up 9 times out of 10 in that top 3 to 5 range. Some people sleep on this athleticism highly. Maybe that's because he's a white guy who plays a slot receiver role, but he's really athletic. He's really quick. Look at that 40 speed. He's not just a route running technician, which he is. He doesn't really have a whole lot of issues. I think he just has his release has some false steps. So he's not eating up as much space as he should be. He's kind of doing a little bit of the shakes too much when he's about to break on a route. And then he has a limited catch radius for jump balls, but you're not looking for a guy like that to go out and go get jump balls. So that's not what you're drafting him for. Outside of that, I think Ladd's going to be really successful in this league for a really long time, and I had to fit him somewhere. And number 5 felt like the great spot to put him because 4 through 1, I like all the guys. I can't really put anyone higher, especially my number 4 guy is like my favorite wide receiver in the draft. So 5, I got Ladd. Who do you have?
I thought about putting Ladd here, but I put A.D. Mitchell at 5, mostly because I keep seeing people mocking Ladd to the 49ers, and I really don't like the idea of that. And so it might have been like my bitterness towards that mock draft that I was just like, you know what, I'm going to put you at number 6. He's got devastating quickness. His long speed isn't bad. Obviously, he's not going up to the jump, but I just think it's one of those players that when you look at the offensive coordinators of the NFL right now, obviously Kyle Shanahan, Mike McDaniel, those type of innovators, and the ability to get a player like Ladd constantly on linebackers or safeties or anything like that. If he goes to the right team, which is funny because I'm sitting here thinking I don't like him on the Niners, but if he goes to the right team, I think he could be absolutely devastating in what he can do. And we've seen, I don't want to run off 10 of the token white wide receiver slot guys. We've seen Renfro and Edelman and Beasley and all these other guys, but Wes Welker. It just seems like if you look at the NFL landscape right now, they're really devoid of that type of player right now. And he just seems like he might fit right in. I don't hate you having him at 5 at all, especially with you having Brian Thomas falling out of your top 5. But I left him out. I went A.D. Mitchell at 5, and then the aforementioned Brian Thomas Jr., I put him at 4.
Okay. Talk about Brian Thomas Jr., and then we can get to AD.
So if this was last year, Brian Thomas isn't anywhere on the landscape here, but he improved so much from 2022 to 2023, much like other players that we're going to talk about later on that I think can just be really coached up at the next level and be really successful at the next level. My biggest issue with Brian Thomas that I'm a little worried about is his ability to beat press coverage. And if you Google
Yeah.
Brian Thomas and if you Google draft profile and you read three of them, all three of them will mention the same thing, that he may struggle to beat press coverage. And you don't see a ton of press coverage all the time in the NFL because if it gets beat, it gets beat. But if you have
Yeah.
a player that's known to not be able to beat press coverage, then he's going to see it a lot. And
Yeah.
these young wide receivers have really been tested in recent years. I know the first couple of games with Seattle, Jackson Smith and Jigba, people got up in his chops to see how he was going to handle it.
Yeah.
Rashee Rice, that's a whole nother story. We won't even get into that guy. Just these young, quick twitch wide receivers pressing them at the line to see if they can handle the physicality of the NFL. And if Brian Thomas can beat press coverage regularly at the NFL level, then the sky's the limit for this guy.
Absolutely.
But he has not proved yet that he can. But everything else really connects for me, so I have him at 4.
At 4, I have A.D. Mitchell. So I wanted to leave off AD until this. This is my favorite wide receiver in the draft. I know obviously he's not the best wide receiver in the draft. I've just fallen in love with AD Mitchell. I think this man has superstar potential. He hasn't posted the numbers of a superstar, right? You look at Malik Neighbors and Marvin Harrison Jr., you look at these numbers that they're posting, right? 14, 15, 12, 100-yard, seasons in college, and AD just hasn't put up that type of production. But man, dude, he has superstar written all over him. How fluid he is as a route runner, fast footwork. You have the contested catch ability. His biggest issue is his attitude as a superstar diva receiver is kind of an issue. And then the posting of elite numbers, which is like, okay, well, your quarterback isn't the greatest fucking guy in the world. So kind of says a lot about Quinn Ewers that you can't take guys a little bit further. You're not mocked a lot higher in future drafts because of AD Mitchell and Xavier Worthy and Jatavian Sanders, which we'll talk about later. But you have a lot of guys on your team and you can't do a whole lot with them. AD Mitchell is some of my favorite tape to watch, and I've seen him be compared to CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens. I see a lot of those type of comparisons flying off of him, and I see a little bit for sure. I love some of the clips where he doesn't run a lot of routes when he knows it's not coming towards him. Then he will go ahead or he has an incident where he runs to the sideline and he screams at his coach to get me the fucking ball. But then right after that, they give him the ball and he goes and makes an insane contested catch touchdown. It's just the dude's insane. Where he beats a dude off the line just for fun. He knows the ball's not coming to him, but beats a guy off the line and he turns around and points at him and he fucking laughs at him just for fun. He has superstar written all over him. His attitude's definitely going to be a problem in the NFL. They have programs and stuff for all this type of shit, but he is the diva wide receiver written on his name right now, and I'm falling in love with him. I love AD.
Yeah, it's funny. I watched like a 3-minute YouTube video on him the other day, and the guy was breaking him down. He's like, yeah, when he's the primary receiver, when he knows he gets to the ball, he's got CeeDee Lamb written all over him. And then when he doesn't get the ball, when he knows it's not going to him, he's some mixture of T. Higgins and George Pickens. And I know there was a bunch of those videos last year of George Pickens when it was a run play or whatever, he wouldn't even come off the line. And I'm just like, well, that's not going to play at the NFL level.
Yeah.
I think people also criticize his footwork. I'm not going to sit here and criticize his footwork in a big board just because, again, that's something that I think can be coached. Like, the NFL has wide receiver coaches for a reason. He might have wasted steps in his footwork, but they'll figure that out. If the talent is there, frankly, Jerry Rice versus Randy Moss. When you're uber talented Randy Moss, you don't have to work as hard. When you're not uber talented Jerry Rice, you have to put in the effort every day and you become the greatest of all time. So when you are blowing by everybody at the college level, the high school level, you don't have to put as much time into the mechanics and the footwork of your release and everything like that. But when you get to the next level, they're going to really drill that in for him. So to be honest with you, I saw Brian Thomas mocked at number 12 or 11 or 13 something the other day, something extremely high. And I was just like,
9.
Boy, oh boy.
No, 8.
Yeah. I mean,
8 Falcons. Yeah.
And I'm just like, I wonder if people will look back on this draft and think to themselves, man, like it really should have gone the big three, and then it should have been two guys from Texas back to back. And I like Ladd, but what Xavier Worthy brings to the table is a little bit more exciting than Ladd to me in terms of what I want to watch on the TV excitement factor. 3rd and 6 and getting the first down is awesome. Trust me, we got a guy, Juwan Jennings, that is amazing at it. But
3rd and Juwan,
that third and Benny, yep. I guess that rolls us right into 3-2-1. I think you and me are locked up on this one, unless you're going to put Rome in front of Marvin Harrison Jr. for some freaking reason.
I might.
Oh God.
3 Malik Neighbors, 2 Rome, and 1 Marvin Harrison Jr.
All right, good. Thank you.
So this isn't going to be the chalk popular one. I know some people have this the exact same way. Why? The question is going to be for some people before you start, typing it up. Let's wait a fucking second. Why are we putting Rome over Malik? What do you see in it? And then I'll jump on whatever you see too.
I just don't think it's hard to explain, but it's just when you're looking at 2 and super talented wide receivers, like Malik Neighbors is taking top 5 visits at this point, right?
Yeah.
When you're looking at players like this, and I'm gonna throw this out here, I believe Malik Neighbors is getting drafted over Rome. Just to throw that out there. When I watch the two of them together, I just say, wow, a little bit more often with Rome than I do with Neighbors. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with Neighbors being consistent game in and game out, and it is what it is. But there's just something about Rome that just, since I started watching him outside of Marvin Harrison Jr., that's a lot of background noise in my headphones from this dumb phone. Outside of Marvin Harrison Jr., he just seems like he's got everything. And I know that's not hard-hitting analysis, but when you're just talking about who you expect to be, successful, that's not the conversation here. I think they're both going to be extremely successful. It's just, I love Rome. I don't know what to tell you except for I love him. That's what it is. I just think he's a hell of a talent. I think he's going to do everything at the next level really, really well. And we don't need to argue CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Ayuk. We don't. It's 2 different teams. It's 2 different things that those 2 players are asked to do.
Yeah.
We don't need to argue that. We don't even need to argue Justin Jefferson and God damn it, the Bengals guy,
Ja'Marr Chase.
Thank you. We don't need to argue that. They're amazing talents. It doesn't matter who's 1 and 2. It's the same thing here. Rome, Neighbors, they're great. I just think it's Rome. That's my hodgepodge analysis for you.
Yeah, so it's not, the thing is here's what I have. My cons for Marvin Harrison Jr. on my Google Doc here is 1 line. It doesn't even take up a whole line. My cons for Rome takes up a line and a half. My cons for Malik takes up a little bit more room than that. The biggest problem with Malik Neighbors is he relies on his uncanny lookalikes to Antonio Brown when he's running routes, because he's one of the only other guys that you could see him change direction and speed up at the same time. It's something we don't see come into the league that often. That's why people are so excited about him, right? He has the big play ability. You give him a 2-yard drag and all of a sudden he can take it to the house because he's just that explosive. He has a lot of issues. I think the same thing Brian Thomas does in press. I think when guys get their hands on him and disrupt the beginning of his route, he almost like forgets what he's supposed to do. It's like he coordinates out his route before he does it, and he doesn't expect any resistance to come to it in terms of the press exactly to him. So I think he could, use a little work with his hands on hand fighting initially in the beginning of contact, get his mind working towards that. I think it's a lot of mental stuff to get his hands up and, try to chop and get him to do a couple more things. But that change of direction speed while he's in breaking on a route is stupid. It's ridiculous. The thing with Rome is the only thing you can really be like, oh, not a lot of yards after the catch. That's kind of it.
Yeah, but so I've seen that, right? I've seen that, but Malik Neighbors 6 foot, 200 pounds. Rome 6'3", 215. Big difference there. Just in terms of durability, and also Rome, like the yak thing, because I mean, Marvin Harrison Jr. has kind of got the same issue, right? He's not super fast with his hands in the ball.
Adequate but not elite type situation. Yeah.
Yeah, think like Debo Samuel, right? His speed with the ball is way quicker than just his 40 time, right? The thing with Rome is that he who's throwing that football to him? Like, let's look at Yak as the ball is in a perfect placement. You get the ball perfectly on the slant. You get the ball perfect on the dig, and then you have the ability to make a move. Instead of your catch radius is all over the place. Your catch on your hip, your catching high. That was the one thing that stood out to me with Rome when I was watching him. Is just like, holy hell! If it's like in the vicinity of him, he's catching the ball.
Yeah,
and to the detriment of him and his Yak stats and things like that. Anyways, because he's not always been put in the proper position to succeed on the route with the way the ball was placed. And that comes down to a quarterback issue, and I'm not going to hold that against him.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's funny because he has that on his deep routes. I think his deep route running is, you can rival Marvin Harrison Jr. and Rome Odunze against each other with the deep route separation. That final gear, it's funny, the final gear that both those guys have, and it's not like you see it. You don't see them go into the final gear, but it's so smooth they go into it that they could separate just a little bit more to be able to just get a little bit of space, be able to catch that ball is impressive. And I think those two guys on the deep route separation is really good, but they're both good everywhere. And the thing is, we're not talking a lot about Marvin because we've heard it all from Marvin, right? Marvin's going to go, as high as 4.
Yeah, we knew this 3 years ago.
And it's just, you see it year after year after year. And he's another one of those guys. He kind of is in that Joe Alt category where you see him play and you go, yeah, he's kind of fucking boring. He does it so smooth where you're just like, dude, what the fuck is going on? Does he not care? Or is he just that good? No, he's just that good where everything looks like he's not trying because everything's just so smooth with him. That's what's frustrating. It's another one of those guys just kind of boring to watch. And you wouldn't expect that from the guy who's supposed to go, one off the board when it comes to wide receivers. So
I think a lot of times there's a lot of fatigue with
definitely
certain players and great wide receivers out of Ohio State, right? Like, I think that's just kind of there's just fatigue when it comes to certain things like that.
Yeah.
Although I'm interested to see how the narrative is going to change, obviously, with the transfer portal and the NIL money and these players going to different places and emerging from different schools. Like Caleb Williams, the number 1 draft pick in the class, coming from USC, and teams like, I'm not going to start this conversation, but the Colorado Buffaloes and things like that. Just these seeing the kind of the recruits that Idaho has landed this offseason, just things like that. Like, it's going to be interesting to see how much this school prejudice is going to play out in the coming years with the talent being so diversified. We're no longer getting, I don't think the days of getting 20 draft picks off of a team from Alabama I think that's kind of ending. So it'll be interesting to see how things like, but he's from this small school, if that stuff starts to die because of the diversification of college football.
Yeah, get your fucking dictionaries out. All right, we're throwing it all at you.
I'm an educated person, okay? And there ain't no script. This ain't the WWE. This promo was not scripted by nobody. I just come out here and I shoot. I drop pipe bombs like my boy CM Punk, and that we just go. We just go.